Yeah, the fit on camera look hard though. Yours?
Thanks.
The round fit. Oof.
This is the foreign affair for it.
Yeah, yeah. It's
That's
like
fire.
when Anik was touring, not touring, but he did a show like 2 years back. I grabbed it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
bro. You gonna jump right in, or you want to count down?
You can just count it down.
All right, cool.
Appreciate it.
Countdown coming in live in five, four, three, two, one.
Tej, thank you for doing this, bro. Our first one.
Of course, what's good?
I'm glad I ran into you, dash bumped into you, dash hounded you down.
That was crazy. We met
Yeah.
in front of Quavo, which is just a crazy experience. But
Yeah. But no, appreciate you doing this, man. First episode of Conversations with Chai. So we had to, get the chai from one of our own. But I wanted to, yeah, just like kind of start with you. Start with kind of where I originally saw you. I peeped a Patty Mahomes bit that you did, which I thought was insane. I was like, yo, there's a brown guy shooting Patrick Mahomes. Yo, walk me through that. I kind of know the story, but I definitely want everybody to know the story on like how you got there, where it started.
yeah, that is a pretty crazy story. I think like how far back do we go in that story is the question, but
Let's
the
start. I mean,
specific
yo,
thing,
let's start it from the beginning, right? Like you're now shooting people, like you're shooting for Kolkata Chai, you're shooting for Indo Warehouse, you are shooting with like some of like the biggest people in like brown media currently. So I definitely want to start from like the beginning.
word. Okay, yeah. So pretty much I'd say like the crazy story I like to say is that a Young Thug concert led me to working with the NFL, and then that led me to working with Patrick Mahomes. But I'll kind of jump into
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
story. So basically, like I started off when I was like 18, basically just photographing concerts. Like I was big in music, and I was just like so interested into like the music scene in my city, Dallas. So I was just going to every concert I could. I was trying to like basically get into the shows, because like usually you have to be like affiliated with the media outlet or something like that. Like I just tried to finesse into shows by like messaging people on the tour, like messaging the photographer, messaging the artists themselves. Like I was just on Instagram DMs going crazy. Like literally the definition of shooting your shot
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
was me like shooting my shot in Instagram DMs.
So what, you're just like peeping somebody coming to your
Yeah, so
city
I
and
would
then you're
peep all
just
the
like,
tours, and then I would like message people. Um yeah, so like on this specific one, I saw Young Thug and 21 Savage were coming to Dallas, and they were super hot at the time. And I mean, they're still like crazy, but like it was like 2016. It was gonna be like a huge show, and I messaged everyone that I could, and I got like no responses. Like I messaged their photographer, I'm pretty sure like I just snoop and like I find like who's the tour manager, who's this and that. I messaged the artists themselves. You never know like who could respond, but I ended up getting like no responses, and I'm just sitting at home like, all right, like life goes on. You feel
mhm.
me? I just tried to get into the show, but then I noticed when I'm sitting at home, Young Thug's photographer goes on Instagram Live, and I'm like, let me just see what's up. And he's just showing the line off outside, and I go into Instagram Live, and
This is day of?
yeah, it's like an hour before the show.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I just go on the Instagram Live, and I'm like briefly say like, "Hey, I'm a photographer, like just wanted to see if there's any way I could photograph the show." And he's like, "Okay, I got you." Like just he reads it on live, and he's like, "Okay, I got you. Like I'm gonna message you after I'm done with the live." And he basically messaged me back. He saw my old DMs that I sent him, and he was like, "Okay, like I can get you a pass if you can pull up to the show like right now." And so basically he wrote me the pass. It was waiting for me at the show. I went in there, I photographed Young Thug and 21, and then I posted the photos the next day. And that was like in itself just like a crazy experience
Yeah,
for
yeah,
me to
yeah.
be able to like even get that opportunity at that time. But it was just like Young Thug's photographer Garfield, he helped me out and like gave me that chance. He didn't even know who I was, but he was like,
It's important, right? Like
yeah,
getting the look, right? But let me ask you this, because like I don't want, because we're going through the story kind of quickly too.
yeah.
I don't want it to seem like to people that are listening that this just happened like overnight for you, right? How many DMs are you sending before you get like that look? right?
Word, yeah, like, I mean, this show was just one show of, like, many that I would, like, do this with. Like, I think before the show, I did the same thing with Yachty. Like, I
Okay.
photographed Yachty a little bit before the show in the same way. Like, his photographer got me in, and videographer, Karaoke, who's also super dope. Like, these guys all just I was able to get all these different chances from different people. Before that, I was working with like a promotion company called Intelligent Grind in my
Mhm.
city. And like I would photograph all their shows. I kind of got in with them in the same way. And like I was doing this, like this is what I was doing. You know, I was just always photographing shows at the same time, like doing as much as I could. This just happened to be one up. This is like for me back then, this was not a life-changing thing either. It was just I can only tell you like looking back the significance of like that moment.
That's a lot of times,
Yeah.
like, that is really how it is, right? Like, everyone expects, like, "Yo, like, when I get my moment, like, I will know that this is my moment," right? But a lot of the times, right, like, we know what came after now looking back, right? So what
Yeah.
did come after, right? So you shoot Thug,
Yes. So I
right?
shot Thug in 21. I posted the photos and then someone reached out to me like the next day who I didn't know at the time, but it was an artist from Louis. It was an artist from St. Louis. His name was Rez. And he reached out to me and was just like, let's shoot. And I was with it. Like we shot a bunch of content and like I don't even think he was making music at that time, but like over time we started doing photo shoots, eventually like music videos. But he happened to be really close friends with Zeke, and that's how I kind of pretty much got intro to Zeke.
When you say
Um,
Zeke, right, let's just,
yeah,
say the name. We're talking about
yeah.
Ezekiel
So
Elliott at that time,
yeah, yeah. So
the
like
running back of the Dallas Cowboys.
yeah, so Ezekiel Elliott was on the Cowboys at that time. Now he's on the Patriots, but this is back in like 2016, 2017. So at that
You're getting,
time,
like, poppin' Zeke.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
getting, like
Zeke's still popping,
yeah, I
you
know,
feel
you're
me?
getting
But
star of the
yeah,
Cowboy yeah, but
no word, word.
you're
It was a
getting the
crazy
star of the
era,
Cowboys.
and but like I had met him back then. We actually met at like a it was like crazy. Like we met at a G concert for the first time
Okay.
because like Rez told me to pull up to his G concert, and then like I just put up with them and shot photos like backstage and stuff like that. And then really like I just kept doing my thing because it's
Mhm.
like nothing again, like nothing really it wasn't like my life changed overnight. It was like I had met Zeke and at the same time I'm working with other clients. I'm still trying to grow as like a photographer, videographer. I think I was still in college at this time too. So I'm
Yeah.
like doing that. I'm I'm in the mix, right? And then a few years later, COVID happened, right? I'll say like I don't even think I've ever said this story before, but like basically, like COVID happened, right? And then I noticed Zeke, who I had done things like I had done a few things for Zeke here and there, like he would do like charity events and like a few things here and there, but nothing like we were working super seriously.
Mhm.
Um, but I had know him and I saw like he started streaming on Twitch like during COVID because there's like everyone was kind of doing that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I saw him like post on Twitch and it was just like an IG story, but it was like shot on his phone. And I was like, you know, I could help with this. Like my thing was like, and my thing still now is kind of like doing creative direction. Like people that I work with, I don't just kind of do one thing. I like to just see how I can help them as a whole and like see the whole thing. So I was like, I just whipped him up like a quick little graphic and just texted it to him for his Twitch stream.
Yeah.
And I think that like I tell people that this story just to say that like I think like I work with a lot of people and I think the reason I get to work with a lot of people is because like I do things without necessarily being asked or
It's
like
proactive,
that's
right?
my job. When I work with people, my job is to kind of like I self give myself that job that I'm doing things that I know you need that you may not know you need, you know?
It's like the taking the initiative, right? Like, I think a lot of people, like, hey, like, I wanna see the money before I do, like, anything. Like, we know a lot of people that just, like, operate like that, but I
Yeah.
think for a lot of it is, like, are you willing to just put in that extra effort, right? Go above and beyond, right? Because
Yeah.
you didn't just, like, sit on the fact that, like, "Yo, I know Zeke," right? Or like, "Hey, Zeke hit me up," right? It's like, "Hey, I can bring value to you
It's
and
all
value
it
to the
is,
table,"
bringing
right?
value. Yeah, with everybody, it's like bringing value is super important. So I kinda did that small thing, and that was kinda like I feel what kinda sparked the new thing that that really kind of took everything up, because after I did that, we started talking a little bit more about like doing social content and things like that. And then eventually the season started opening up, like they could play again. Um, and then like pretty much he asked me to just during the off season help him take his content a lot more serious.
Yeah.
So then I started pulling up to like every practice pretty much, and then getting content. And I think at that time like nobody was really doing that. Like usually you see players don't come out with like reels. Reels was also new at the time too.
Mhm.
Like players don't come out with like these workout videos, especially like the way that I started doing them for Zeke. So every time like we would post, and Zeke being who he is, like every time we would post, it would kind of go crazy. Like the news would pick it up, or like it would just be like the hot topic. Like people are also had their eyes on Zeke. So
Talk about
we
that
started doing
feeling.
that.
Talk about that feeling now, right? Like looking back at it, right? And obviously in the
Yeah.
moment too. Like how are you feeling, right? Like you're getting obviously like some of the most eyes that you're probably seeing on any of your work, right?
Yeah.
Like what is that feeling in moment?
It was crazy. It was one of those moments where I was like, yo, like this is this is my chance. This is like my chance to prove what I can do, because I know there's a lot of eyes that are going to see it. And regardless, I put my all into everything, but it's like I knew at that time when I was in that moment, like, yeah,
I gotta go
I got to
super
go
crazy.
crazy on
Yeah,
making
yeah, yeah.
these. And so I really like understood that, especially like what the attention it was getting and whatnot.
Yeah. So like, okay, so now you're recording for Zeke and
Yeah.
a lot of eyes, right?
Yeah.
Getting different opportunities.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, so like the main thing was like I did the whole off season, um, recording the whole off season for Zeke and dropping videos. And then like somewhere toward the end of that, I got a DM from someone that works at the NFL. And then they were like, hey, like, we love what we've seen you do with Zeke. Like, you could do this for us in the actual season. And I was like, yeah, that'd be great, because, Zeke plays in the season. So what
Mhm.
am I going to do after? I mean, I was also doing a bunch of other things at the same time. Um, but like, I accepted this offer with the NFL. And the NFL thing was also like more like basically freelance. Like, I shot all the home games, but it was really cool because I even started working with CD a little bit, and then it was cool because I got this cool chance, which a lot of people don't get, which is working with the NFL, but also being able to like just whip up highlights and stuff and text it to the players that I know.
Mhm.
So it's like this cool place for me to be in, like where I get to like work with both people.
So you're on like a hot streak right now. Like you're working with the NFL, you're working with CD, you're working with Zeke. And I think the first video I saw of you was I think you made a TikTok where you were like, "Hey, I'm dropping everything and moving to New York City."
Oh,
I think
where
that
that
was
was
the
the first one?
I think that
Yeah.
was the first thing I ever saw from you.
Yeah.
And then I like
Okay.
went back and like looked, right? So explain that, right? Like you write it, you're obviously
So
doing
right
well at
before that is when the Mahomes shoot happened.
okay.
Yeah,
Oh, so
just to
you
give
shot
you that.
Mahomes
Yeah, I shot Mahomes in Dallas, yeah,
and
and
then
then I left.
okay, so walk. So, all right, so so that's crazy. You shot Mahomes, right? Probably one
Yeah,
of the flyest stuff at that time that you've done of your career, right?
it was definitely, yeah, it was
And
definitely
then
the craziest thing I've done so far, I think, in
and then
terms
you
of, like,
decided, hey, I'm coming to New York.
yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Why?
So, I had reached, like, this point, I feel, in Dallas, like, I had felt, even with all of this stuff, like, I was doing, like, working with the athletes I was working with the NFL. And like the Patrick Mahomes thing was actually really cool. It was actually a really like almost different opportunity to an extent, because I got to work on like a really big branded campaign.
Hmm.
But and that's like actually that to step on the Mahomes thing for a second, like that was a moment where I was like, I kind of dreamed that I would be in this situation, like doing a big branded campaign.
It's the
And
NFL, right?
yeah,
It's the NFL. It's Patrick Mahomes, right? It has to feel
yeah, it
insane,
was
right?
it was crazy. But despite all that, like I was still feeling like artistically, it was kind of two things. Like it was me like personally and also like artistically. Like I felt like I had kind of done everything I could do here. Like I was kind of working. I was like, who else can I work with in Dallas? Like I was like,
Patrick
who
Mahomes
else
wasn't
is
enough.
here?
Nah.
And it was just like my thing was mainly that creating content around football and these things, it was cool, but it's like there's more to what I want to do. There's more to what I want to express. And I had that from the jump. I knew like even when I first accepted this NFL offer, I was like, I'm gonna use this. It's gonna help me get to like where I need to be because it gives me like this sort of credibility. It gives me like this sort of work behind me. But I knew like my main goal is to just be an artist in itself, and I have my own things that I want to express. And and yeah, like that's what kind of led me to New York and like starting from the bottom again, you
Yeah.
know?
So you come to New York, right?
Yeah.
And now obviously you have like a somewhat of a network within the like photography community, within the artistic community as a whole, right? But you're coming to New York, reestablishing yourself, right? What does that look like?
Yeah, so like I came to New York, didn't really have a plan for what I was gonna do here, but I definitely like met. So like before I actually moved to New York, I did a shoot for Pop Shift actually,
Okay.
and I was like working with Pop Shift doing a shoot, and that's like my first real experience meeting people, especially in like the South Asian scene. And I realized like something kind of clicked for me here. Like I was like, oh, this is like kind of where I need to be. Like it was shortly after that that I was like, yeah, I really got to move here, cuz and I think like back then I didn't even like really get a taste of what it actually was. I just had a small taste and I was like, yo, I really need to be here. I think this is like just where I need to be. I think this is where um every like the energy is just right. I think back in Dallas I was feeling like especially the culture in Dallas is very much like people are just getting married. They're got their lives like so like planned out. Like they could tell you what they're gonna do in the next 30 years. Like I don't have that. And but like being around that made me feel like I'm doing something wrong. But when I stepped into New York, I was like, I'm actually not doing anything wrong. Like these people are all kind of on my same boat. They're all building, they're all doing different things that they're striving for. And that's like the energy I needed. And that's why like I ultimately ended up moving here.
This the heart and capital of what me and you joke around and called it like the new brown media wave, right?
Yeah.
Like this is, I think, like to the point that you're making, right? Like so many like, and this is a main reason why this podcast is even going to exist, right? So many like South Asians are doing like super fly shit, like
Yeah.
super fly shit, right? Like we have people business building like massive businesses, massive artists are coming out of like this area, and like it has to feel like a high coming here and seeing that. But to kind of like go into, did you have a plan to be a part of that? Because I know like you're coming working on like almost like a silo in Texas.
Hmm.
Now you're coming here, right? Where it's like you don't necessarily have all the connections, right? But is there a vision for like what your role in this community like look like while when you were coming here?
That's actually such a good question. I think like I moved to New York and I still have this to an extent, but it's like I really moved here to be more of a creator, like focus on my own content, but at the same time help other people because that's my thing as well is like creating, doing creative direction or doing videos, doing photos, like this media stuff, doing that with people. But I think like to me, I knew that brown media would be a part of it and like the South Asian space would be a part of it, and I don't think I, like, really thought it would be as big of a part as it actually is for me right now, and but I think, like, I love that
You are the
it
guy.
is, like, I
You are the guy.
didn't
You are the person that people are now tapping to get any. I saw the last like three ad works I've seen shot by Tej Patel, right? Somewhere along it, whether it's a Kolkata Chai, whether it's an indoor warehouse, you are working in that space now, right?
Yeah,
Like, is that
yeah.
how does that feel now? Like coming in, right? Like you came. How long has it been now that you've been in New York?
Oh, a little over a year. I moved last August.
So it happened fast, right?
Happened fast. New York is a fast city for sure.
Yeah. So now, when you say like you want to have your own like content creation, like what does that look like for you? Like, what is that content creation for you?
Yeah, so I think like one thing is, well, I'll touch on this is like one thing is that New York has such a special era going on. I feel like I'm playing into a bit here because I feel like everyone that moves to New York probably says this,
Mhm.
but I do feel like there's a special era going on, especially with this South Asian community. And it's just a beautiful thing to be a part of because, I moved here and I was like, I'm gonna work with like these huge brands. Like I want to work with this brand and that brand. And like I didn't I knew that South Asian space would be a part of it, but again, didn't think it would be as large of a part. Is I think my mindset changed as I got here because the more I get in the mix, the more I like enjoy being in it. The more I enjoy like, why am I fiending for all of this? Like, why am I fiending for these big brands? Like, I still am, but like, I'm just saying, like, why am I fiending so hard for these big brands? I'd rather come up with my community. I'd rather
And build
make
those
things with the
brands.
people that I like. I'd rather the brands want us. I'd rather, these huge brands, like, I'd rather Nike come to us and say, let's do a campaign and with featuring all of you guys versus something else, which is just playing into what they're already doing. Like, I think we're doing something really special. So,
For sure. We talked about it like a little bit when me and you like first met, right? We
yeah,
are seeing the businesses that we are going to look at, like a Gucci or like whatever, being built in front of us, right? We're seeing those people build it.
yeah,
Like bro, like South Asians just sold out like Brooklyn Mirage. Shout out to like everyone who's involved with like Indo Warehouse and stuff like that, right?
yeah,
Like they sold out Brooklyn Mirage, right? Anytime I see like Kolkata Chai and Ani do like a thing, they have a line around the block, right?
yeah,
They have storefronts now in like one of the most popping streets in New York, period. Right. And like
yes,
that's being built and you're a part of that now, right? Like you're
yeah.
building and coming up with that. Cause I think a lot of times, like, especially like South Asians, we have this not this like need for validation, but we have this need for validation from things that we've seen like growing up, right? Like
It's true. It's true. It's
you
so true.
you got that from I mean, like, listen, you got the validation from the NFL, right? But now it's like with that validation, you have the opportunity to like build.
I did, and that's something interesting. I think about that because I'm like, I got this validation, and it's like I was really in that point. Like, I could use that and really have worked with whoever. Like, I could still kind of, and I still do again, but I choose to work in this space. Like, I don't have to work in this space, but I want to work in this space. And there's like advantages, there's disadvantages, like whatever it is, but like I just enjoy being in the space.
But that's I want to like
Yeah,
because I think that you're super important to this space, right? And I think that our resources are ourselves, right? Like
yeah,
if we farm out like all the fly photographers and videographers and we farm out all the fly like entrepreneurs to go build something for somebody else, like that's what's going to happen, right? Like
yeah.
our culture and our infrastructure doesn't get built out, right? Like we just
Mhm.
help whatever already exists, right? But like you working in that space is super super important, right? Because if our best don't work in that space, then we're not going to have like some of the better products, right? But with
Yeah.
the best working in our space, like we have the opportunity to create super super fly shit, right? Um, so talk about that. You said advantages, disadvantages working in this. Like,
Yeah, for
let's walk through.
sure.
Let's walk through. Let's start at the disadvantages.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like the South Asian space, especially when it comes to like entertainment, it is early in the space to an extent. And what that means is just it's early with the brands, it's early with everything. So, you're not gonna if I'm gonna go and chase down like to work with a big brand like Nike, Adidas, like their budgets are gonna be different. If I'm gonna chase down to work with like these artists that have been in the game and like work in like these other spaces that are more established to a certain extent, it's like it's just a game of that. Like their budgets are gonna be bigger, the way they work is gonna be a bit different. They have a little bit more attention. So there's like working in the South Asian space comes with, hey, like that I'm kind of giving that up. But like for me, it's not really about that. It's about I'm working the South Asian space because I would rather come up in this era. I would rather be a part of this era.
For sure. So this is a question for you because we kind of talked about it prior. So what does it look like now? Because like you have this like portfolio, right? Like you have this body of work. So you have a rate or something that you command, right? But like you said, like these budgets are being built out as we speak, right? So they're not
Yeah.
the budgets of a Nike. So how does that balance look like for you? And like this is more so for like any photographer coming up and trying to work in that space, right? Like
Yeah.
what is the line between, hey, like this is my value and this is what I like need to kind of get. Not that everything is about the money, right? But like you have a certain like value that like you need to hit too, right? So
Mhm.
what is that balance of like, hey, this is my value, but also, hey, I understand that these budgets aren't like Nike budgets or NFL Films
Yeah.
budgets, right?
Yeah, I think, like well, could you restate the question, actually?
I would say that my question, like, essentially, right, like, is like, how are you balancing out, like, hey, this is my rate,
Yeah.
right? This is my rate if I was working with the NFL, but
Mhm.
that's not your rate working for whoever in the South Asian space, right? But
Yeah.
how do you balance that out, right?
Yeah, that is interesting. I will say what's super interesting is, like, the NFL actually gave, like, the worst rate, like, worse than, like, anybody. I don't know if I'm about to get
Yeah.
whatever. But literally, like, not a great rate for what it was, and that's just the reality of it. And I'm saying the reality of it because, like, working with these huge names is also over glamorized.
Okay.
Right? Like, working with, like, it just depends, like, it just depends on what it is, like, working with big names is sometimes over glamorized, like, you will get more working with, like, a more niche, more, like, boutique brand sometimes, depending on
It's like, we're
what it
the
is.
NFL, you're lucky to be here. Like, we don't really
Yeah,
gotta pay
yeah,
you, right?
exactly,
Like, you're just lucky to be
people will
here.
use, like, that big name and, like, this thing to make you, like, who values you is the main thing. Like, who values you to work with them? And, like, I'm very fortunate. Like, a lot of the people, especially in the South Asian space, they really value, like, working with me. I enjoy working with them because I know that, like, I get this feeling with first of all, it just feels like home working in that space.
Yeah.
And then I get this feeling like I'm very, like, careful, like, who I work with. I can tell very easily, especially with how long I've been doing stuff. But, like, for the most part, like, everyone I work with, I just feel like, if I don't feel like they're taking advantage of me if I am taking a lower rate. I just know that this is, like, what it is right now. I know, like, if I work with them and they become successful, which I want them to be if they work with me, like, I know that they'll take care of me after type shit. And the other thing is that, like, it is a balance though. Like, you have to take care of yourself at the end of the day. And I think there is a lot of, like, the brown space is moving. Like, a lot of things is happening really, really fast. And there's a lot of, like, of course, a part of that is just the economics of it. There is a lot of money floating around in that space. But I think, yeah, it's definitely a balance. I'll say that as an artist, you just have to find what's valuable to you. Sometimes, like, sometimes things align. Like, sometimes doing things for low, doing things for cheap, or doing things for free. Like, it makes sense under the right circumstances. Um, if everyone's getting what they want out of it, right? And I think, like, where things get, like, fried is, like, when someone isn't getting what they want out of it, or like whatever. But yeah.
Do you think that, like, you kinda, like, briefly touched on it, the economics behind it, right? Because I do think that there is a lot of money, like, floating around in this area
Yeah.
that we haven't even, like, fully scratched even,
Yeah,
right?
there
Like,
is for sure.
I think that, like, think about it, just like South Asians as, like, a population, right? A lot of people who are software engineers, lawyers, doctors, right? Like, there is, like, a lot of money just within the South Asian community,
Yeah.
and I think that the products aren't necessarily all the way there for us to completely realize, like, how much money is actually floating in there, right? Uh,
Yeah, the potential is crazy. And I think, like, what really made me kind of think about this a bit more, because I was always like, I mean, I've always been, like, artist and business and, like, trying to navigate both, but it really, like, the art only elevates and the art is only really, like, gonna get to the level it needs to be at when we, like, understand the business behind it. And that's kind of what you're saying, I feel, to an extent.
do you think that, like, for you, right? Like, because again, like, we're creating these spaces, and, like, you're creating these, like, brands, and you're helping create, like, that new wave. Is there somebody or people that you look to from, like, a business or photography perspective where you're like, "Hey, like, I know that I have to do X, Y, and Z," or is it purely based off of your own gut feel, whatever?
Well, like, inspirations wise, yeah.
Inspirations, right?
I guess, like, the way that I kinda operate as a person, I take a lot of inspiration from, like, Virgil Abloh, actually, because,
Really?
like, like, really take a lot of inspiration from him because I feel like he's someone that was just at the center of culture and center of everything, like film, fashion, like, music. To me, I've always wanted my career to just be like what it is right now. Like, what it is right now is everyone just kind of people that know me are like what my career is right now is like people have something creative that they need done and then they just like call me and they're like, hey, like have a special mission for you today. And that's what I've wanted, like that's all I've wanted, like, hey, like I'm working with this artist needs their music video, I might go and shoot this thing for KCC, I'm gonna do this for Indo Warehouse. Like people just call me and they're like, hey, like we have this, like it's this creative project, like can you help with it? That's all I've wanted, and I feel like that's kind of what Virgil did, and then where it gets really beautiful is where like things kind of mix, and I'm seeing more things mix now. Like two people that I work with separately will work together, and that's what kind of builds this whole era and this whole community like even more.
Talk about that. Talk about the mixings.
Yeah.
Talk about the
Like
mixing.
recently we did this little cool little commercial thing like KCC and Indo. And I worked with both of them like separately, and then they decided on their own like we're going to drop like a KCC special collab at the Indo Warehouse at the Mirage, and they did that, and then it was like super cool. I got to film it and it was a beautiful moment where everything kind of came together in a beautiful way at the Mirage.
I think that's like a super underrated thing, and I would love for you. I think you're in a unique position where you can tell those stories. I would love to hear more of those, right? Because I think we're seeing super historic shit happen, like, but we don't, like you said about like the beginning of your career, you don't really appreciate it until like 4 or 5 years down the line, right? Like, how are we gonna feel when we look at that and we're like, yo, Inner Warehouse is now a consistent every month thing at Mirage, right? And they're selling out every month, right? Because we're Indoor Warehouse is what, on their second or third ever, right? And they're still like basically selling that entire
Yeah,
place out.
insane. Yeah.
Like, and I think that from especially the position that you're currently in, right? Working with all these is a super cool thing to like highlight, right? Because I saw that, right? But I think a lot of us like
Yeah.
don't appreciate like how fly that really is, right?
Yeah, it's so cool. I think about it like this is a whole era. You know, we've seen eras like growing up, we've seen eras where all these people work together, right? Like we've seen this hip hop growing up. Everyone in that community was like a thing. Like we used to see everybody collaborate with each other and it was like a thing. And I think for us, like it's cool. Like we're living in our own version of that where these are just people we work with. These are our friends. Like they just happen to be people that do cool things in business and fashion and music, and it all kind of like comes together.
I think that is like one of the cooler things, just like watching from like my perspective, right? Seeing these like people like, hey, like in 5 years, like we don't know where any of these people's careers are going to be, right? But we're assuming they're going to progress,
Go
right?
up, yeah,
So it's like, hey, like these connections are being built right now at the ground level. Like in 5 years, right? What happens when like there's like three Kolkata Chais or five Kolkata Chais in New York City,
yeah,
right? And they're then collabing with Indo Warehouse that is now like a global thing, right? Like we're seeing that with I just a couple weeks ago was like the No Nuzzer party in
hmm,
the city, right? And I see every week or every other week No Nuzzer's doing LA, then they're doing New York, and then they're doing like it's insane to think that hey, these are like just the beginning inceptions of these businesses and of these like of this culture basically, right? Like what
yeah,
we're talking about. Cause when we think about like South Asian culture, like who'd like growing up, like who did we think was South Asian culture?
yeah. It's just I don't even want to talk about it.
Like who did like there was I like listen, like you know the way that we like grew up and like we're like able to identify like hey, like when we were growing up like Drake was coming up. Like, there was like culture that was like happening, right?
Yeah,
Who was that for South Asians? Like I don't
word. There was kind of like nobody that
like
we could look at like
not
that.
like real like communities, right? There
Yeah,
was individuals, right? Like we had a Jay Sean era, right?
yeah. True, true,
We
true.
had like a Mumsy, you know what I'm saying? Like, but we didn't see
But
it
you
at
know what's interesting? Like I've been kind of thinking about that recently. It's it didn't feel like there was really like this community of people.
that was
Like maybe there was one person like Jay Sean is great. Like maybe like that was one moment, kind of one person.
yeah.
I think what really makes it big is like multiple people doing cool things in the space. And I think I see that happening now. Cause it's cool to see like it's just cool to see a music video full of like fly Desi people. It's cool to see
Bro, Tesha
fashion
collabed with
brands.
Jason Derulo.
Yeah.
Like Tesha collabed with Jason Derulo, had a viral TikTok song, right? Like we didn't see any of that like growing up, right? Like Jay Sean
Yeah.
was that, and that was one individual, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
No, that's fire.
we haven't seen like the way that culture is being
But you know
currently
what's
built
also
out.
fire is like Tesha's latest video, Jackmas, because it's also like there's just all these dope dancers in it, and it's like that's what it is. Like that's important to me because it's all these fly dancers that are big on TikTok. It's not even that they're big. It's just everyone looks fly.
It's the community
It's the
that's being built for.
community. It's that hey, I followed this person, but they're in Tesha's video, and it's everything. It's the fashion. It's the creators. It's everything kind of coming together and being bigger than just
Because then
one
everyone gets a
person.
look.
Because I think also like we're always so pressed on every other community like coming at us and trying to be like, yeah, like you guys are cool. Like
The
like
value, yeah,
why do we
yeah.
want that? Like why are we like, yeah, like I mean I wanted that, you know what I'm saying? I'm not above it. I'm just saying that like it's such a thing for us to for some reason want to be just like the token
Yeah, like
person.
back to validation, right?
Back to
Like
validation.
back to
Like, yeah, like I'm
validation.
valid, right? Like like but what's beautiful and I'm really on like really excited about now is like this community just supporting each other, making art with the people we like making art with. I think that's like a beautiful thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think like and we see like there's so many examples of that now that I'm seeing, right? And like people are really like I think the way that like you're passionate about it, there's so many people that are passionate about building that out, right? And
Yeah.
that's like the most exciting part, right? People are putting like their blood, sweat, tears into building that out and making sure that it is with their community, right? Like, bro, like I thought the coolest thing in the world was like Anik did a music video and he like tapped like the Bali Funk girls, right? And I was
Yeah.
like, yo,
Yeah.
that's super fly, right? Like Anik has a song, he has Fat Joe responding to his record like on Complex like years ago, right? And he's deciding like, yo, like let me give the look to every single South Asian model in my community, every single dancer in my community. Um, I think like things like South Asian New York Fashion Week that are being built out like live in front of us, right? Superfly, right? Like, because I see so many people inside of our community that are like, oh wow, I like really wish I could model New York Fashion Week, or oh wow, I really wish I could even attend New York
Yeah.
Fashion Week, right? But then there's this like thing that's being built out, and it's being built out at a pretty high level, right? Like we have like a lot of cool South Asian designers, right? A lot of cool South Asian designers from here, especially, right?
Hmm.
New York specifically. So I think it's like a insane thing, and I think that's why like creatives like you end up being super, super important to the community, right? Because we do need our flashed and our best working on this.
Yeah. Word. No, there's definitely like a lot of people that are needed to like bring everything to life, you know? So like
For sure.
that's what I love being part of it. Like I love being a part of all these different things that are going on.
Are you now like in the current state that you're in? Like, are you actively like networking for opportunities, or are they just kind of like flowing to you?
Yeah, I'd say like they're pretty much flowing to me right now. I think like it I don't actively like reach out too much, but like I would. I think like honestly reaching out is like a super key. Like anytime I've reached out, it's like pretty much gone well. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but like I sometimes just don't. Like I sometimes I'm just recently I've just been in a different place and like busy like working with the people I'm working with because they're doing so much stuff. And then it's also like I'm working on my own things. So I haven't been reaching out as much, but reaching out is a good thing to do.
What does your workflow now like kind of like look like? What does your like process look like in terms of like balancing, hey, like I'm working on my own creatives, right?
Yeah, it can get crazy. Like I'm actually like I struggle with that, but it's definitely for me. I like working in like little sprints.
Okay.
So sometimes, and it just happens to be that way for some reason. Like everyone just picks up the phone one day and it's just like, yeah, we need something. So I just like have a week or 2 weeks where I'm just working like so hard on different projects for different people. But then I can take a step back and have the freedom to like, since I do this full time and I freelance full time, I can have the freedom to like take a step back and like work on my own things, work on scripting things that I want to create and things like that.
So from your like now like kind of jumping into like your creatives, right? Like what is the story that like you want to tell through your media, through the things that you're personally working on, like your passions?
Yeah. So I think like I've been creating for a few years now. I feel like I really stepped into being a creator like during the pandemic, so like 2020. And now I'm kind of on a different like I've just been swaying like through the creator journey and the creative process. Right now, what I'm really excited about is kind of really stepping into bridging these different people that I'm working with. Like I think what I really want to do is I take a lot of inspiration from like what the black community has done. You know, you see Atlanta, you see Insecure, you see these cool shows. Like you see Donald Glover made that, you see Issa Rae made that. All of these for some reason came out like so fast too when you look at it in a way. And I think that's just because like Hollywood really realized like, oh, there's something here with these stories. There's something here, with what the black community has to say and people want to listen to that. And I think like for us, that's what that is for me. Like I take inspiration from that. I feel like there's so many stories that I want to tell from our community. And I think it's going to be a crazy thing when I like combine all these people that I'm working with. That's like my master plan, like, to
Like
kind of,
documentary style, or are we seeing like a
well, I mean, more just,
Tej long
I
form
mean,
movies at some point?
yeah, yeah, like
Yeah,
movies or short films or
yeah.
just like having my friends act and like whatever it looks like. I just think building and providing that like film is cool. Like film is crazy because it is literally the encompassment of every form of art.
Yeah.
And I work like with fashion designers and I work with music artists and then I'm working with people that do businesses. But like film is where all of it comes together. So it's gonna be like what's the fashion in the film? What's the music track in the film? Like who's it made by? Like it's gonna be that's my master plan, which is like very like bird's eye view. But like that's where I see everything combining. And then at the core of it is like stories, our experiences, these things that we've been through in being South Asian in America, which like has kind of never really like I'm not gonna say it's never really been explored, but there's a lot of things to explore about it.
There's definitely opportunity for it. I think like we saw the power of like the like South Asian viewership, the South Asian demographic. Like we have blown people up. Like let's not forget that, right? Like bro, like Hassan Minaj got like absolutely blown up, right? One special, and that's like an
That's
entire
true. That's actually
community
huge. Yeah.
propping somebody forward, right? Lily Singh is somebody who got completely propped forward by this community, and like we have the opportunity to prop. Like, listen, there's a lot of South Asians out there, right? And like the cool thing is like we all kind of like whether we're Bengali, Indian, Pakistan, like we all kind of like identify like, hey, like we're South Asian,
Yeah.
right? So we have the power, like just based off of pure numbers, to really like push people like forward, right?
Mhm.
And I think like to your point, like when you see it's like any product, if you, as soon as you can prove that product has value, like for example, an Insecure pops off. Now it's like okay, like now we can have like an Atlanta. Now we can
Yeah,
have
it's
like
done. When Hollywood see I'm telling you,
when
like, when
Hollywood
Hollywood
sees
sees the taste of it, we're gonna see all of this happen.
well, we saw that like Hollywood, right? We see that everywhere, right? Anywhere where people think like, hey, this product has like viability in the marketplace,
Yeah, it's game.
everybody looks for it, right? Like we saw that in music, right? Like think about it. Hip hop came off as a like a counterculture like initiative, right? Now it is like the biggest
Yeah, it's
genre
huge,
in the
it's
world, right?
everything. Yeah.
Because people understood like, hey, like there's an opportunity to be money made here, right?
Yeah.
And I think that could definitely happen for like South Asians, right? Like we see it, right? Like bro, like there's Bengali artists, there's Indian artists, there's people that are getting Spotify deals,
Yeah.
right? That are inside this community, right? And we just need, I think, more like talent like that, like really pushing, really pushing forward, right? Um, and I think in terms of like the storytelling out of it all, and I think I would love to hear this conversation again happen in like a year, right?
Yeah.
I would love to hear like, yo, like how is this journey looking? Like, are we tracking? Because I see everyone working,
Yeah.
right? And I think like we're just like working away until that all comes kind of like comes together, right? Because I think me and you kind of share like the vision of
What it could look
what
like?
it could
Yeah,
look
we
like,
do, yeah.
right? And I think that is like one of the flyest things that we will, I hope, like get to see and help, like see, right? And for
Yeah.
you, like be like absolutely like part of. Do you carry like some responsibility on like looking at like the community and being like, hey, like I want to be like a connector?
I do, yeah. I do like look at myself like in that way and I don't know if I've like completely activated it yet cuz I'm kind of waiting to activate things at the right time but yeah I do like think that I'm in a very special place because I just from what I do I work with like a lot of people in the community because a lot of people that's what I've always loved about what I do in general because it's not even just about this community but it's like I can work with so many different people And that's why it's cool to me because I get to meet like the craziest people that do the coolest things that you would never meet if you just did like one kind of career. And that's what's interesting to me about like what I do because I get to experience all these like different worlds that like usually people don't ever experience like these worlds all colliding together. But I get to experience that.
Are you like now at the point of your career where you think that like, hey, like, do you want to start putting some of like the short films, right? Like, I know you're always creating like TikTok contents and things like
Yeah.
that. Like, are you like in the spot where like, hey, I want to take on like a longer form project, or are you still like in like, hey, like I still got to build, I still got to hustle on this thing?
Yeah, I'm kind of in that point of like changing things up and really trying to take a step back and see what I can do creatively. At the same time, like what I can do with the current media landscape. But in general, yeah, I'm trying to get more into like really making artistic things, making things that like are short film adjacent or like yeah. Like maybe it's a cut up 1 minute episodic short form thing, but maybe it's a short film. Like that's where I'm at, like deciding like how to specifically do it. But I'm getting closer to like this is the type of stories that I want to
You want
tell.
to tell?
Yeah.
Really didn't want to ask this question, but I feel like it's important to ask. Like if you did have advice, because like back to the point of like, hey, like having you in the space, super fly, right? But we need like five of you, right? Just to support what we think that
Yeah, we
this
need
is going.
like a lot.
We
We
need
need a
like a
lot
lot
more
of you,
people.
right?
We need a lot more creatives and people that
In
like
general, right?
yeah,
So
a lot more creatives in general.
I'm a 21, 22-year-old photographer that's trying to, be a part of this, right? Like, what is the advice?
I would say the advice to someone that's like, yeah, 21 and wants to be a part of this is pretty much there's infinite opportunity here for to be a part of something special. And I think like, well, I'll say like when I was coming up, there's a lot of fears and reservations to doing this, right? I think like at the end of the day, it's kind of like you never know until you do try it. But here's the thing. I talked to a lot of people that are in that place. I think for me, it was never like a question of can I do it? I was like, literally, my story is that I was a computer science major and I just ended up hating it. I only really did it because I was just like so lost and I was like, this is just the thing to do with your life. Like, I don't know,
Study computer
I'm
science?
like
Yeah.
18, I don't know. And I realized this was actually so terrible. And what I really wanted to do was like make films and take photos. And I told myself, I was like, look, like I actually don't care if I'm broke because if I'm doing this, like that's all I want. That's literally all I wanted in life is just to make films and make photos. And that's just like that's where I came from, like, and that's how everything started. And I've been able to like find success and I don't like stress anymore about like things like micro things. Like I have gotten to a place after years where like I'm like cool on the things that I work on and I'm cool like financially. But back then, that's my mindset. And I think like that's if you have that mindset, like what can really stop you? Like I just never felt worried. I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna like figure this out. I don't
That's
know if that's like what would you say?
Nah, I think it's like it's tough, right? I think like I get that, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm wired that way. Like I actually I was just talking to my therapist, right? I
Yeah.
was like, yo, I really wish I could live the life of like because bro, like I have like like a regular job, whatever, right? And I was like, yo, I really wish I could just like do my 9 to 5, go home to the wife and kids, like have the white picket fence, and just like
Yeah.
be like fine with that, right? But instead, I'm on this like chaotic path, like forward, where like like if you like look at it from the outside in, like it's like, yo, this doesn't make sense, right? And
Mhm.
I don't like she's like, yo, like what is the problem with that? Like if you, that's what you want and like that is like the desire, then like that is what you want, right? Like why are you trying to like shy away from being that person? Because I think a lot of times like I think a lot of us have that inside of us, and then like family, like society, like the things around you, seeing people around you like start to
Yeah.
like you said, like when you're in Texas, people getting married, having kids, right? Like I see that all the time, right? Like I grew up
Yeah.
in Jersey, like people are getting married, people are like people like, I went to high school with.
Yeah.
And it's definitely something that like does sway me, like where I'm like, yo, you know what? Like maybe I should just like accept that lifestyle, right? But like for some reason I just don't have that in
It
me,
is a
right?
different mindset. I mean, that made a few things click with me, which is like when I was also when you're like 21, right? Like your friends probably just graduated school esque and like they're getting jobs and now they're seeing some real money. If you want to start something new, like you're not gonna make money. I probably made like $10,000 my first year,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is nuts. But like I was living at home, and these are the type of things I had to do. Living at home is like a privilege at the same time, but like I lived at home, which is a thing. Like most, I feel Desi kids have that option,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
for sure.
but it's like, yo, everybody's gonna look at you like you're a joke. Everybody's gonna look at you like you don't know what you're doing. It's gonna take years for you to like really build it up, and
Because
I
people
that's just what it took for me.
because
Maybe it'll
people
get there faster for you, but like, are you willing to kind of do that? And then it's like if you put in that work and like you're willing to, I think people aren't willing to kind of do that. Like people
bro,
want to get
no
out of college and have
nobody wants to eat shit. Like
yeah,
everybody
no one
wants to
wants
be
to.
Tej in
Yeah.
2023, but nobody wants to be Tej from 29. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
no,
Like nobody wants to eat
really.
shit for like 4 years, right? Just like not that you of course, like your belief in yourself like showed like, yo, I'm going to do this, right?
Yeah.
But like in the moment, you're just like, oh shit, like I'm like going to these shoots, like I'm not getting paid well, right?
Yeah.
And nobody wants to eat that for however much time, right?
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do. Like I'm not gonna. Yeah, it's like the truth is it's super hard. Like it's super difficult. You have to grind so hard to like really be good. But it's like at the same time, it's kind of like the same thing. Like I thought about this too back then, and I still think about it. It's like if you want to be a doctor, it's like 12 years of school, and you don't get paid till like kind of the end of that. Like if you're gonna 12 years, bro. I'm not 12 years into this game either.
You
You know, like
you realize that all of that is purely based off of societal acceptance, right? Because if you tell somebody, "Hey, I'm going to study 12 years, spend 450,000 becoming a doctor when I'm 32," everyone's gonna be like, "Oh yeah, that's fine." Right? But if you tell somebody like, "Yo, I'm gonna become like the biggest like videographer, content creator in the world in 12 years," right? And they're gonna be
imagine
like,
putting like med school hours into that. Like you'll succeed. There's no way. You know?
and
Like
but again, right? It's the barrier of like, especially being like South Asian. It's the barrier of like, what is your parents gonna say? Like, what is your
yeah.
aunts and uncles gonna say? Like, what is your community gonna say about you? That's why, like, I think like people who are like super supportive of people within the creative space, like I'm talking like adults, are like super vital, right? Like, because I
Sure.
think like we don't have enough success stories in the space for us to be like, yo, like this is doable,
Which is
right?
cool about like our generation because we're kind of like becoming that hopefully for like people to kind of see as examples of like people that are in the space and things get a little bit more accepting and becomes a little bit easier. I had support from home. Like my mom supported me in what I'm doing, and by the time I graduated college, I was already like decently successful to the point where like I was like, I'm just gonna do this, and it was not a problem.
What does that look like now for you? Like, just like with your like parents, like they're just like, hey, like this is your career now,
Yeah,
right?
it's great. Like super proud of me for everything that I'm doing, and that's all like that's all you want, you know?
No, and I,
Uh,
I think that's super fly. And I'm like, yo, like it must be sick for you to be able to like live out your dream and then have your parents like be able to like see that, right? Because like
yeah.
in the beginning of all of it, right? It probably like, bro, like think about it. I'm sure like regular
Yeah, my
South, any
mom was
South Asian
definitely like
parents,
stressing out,
like, oh
I
my
hope
God, my son's
everything's
like
gonna be
not gonna,
all right.
yeah, my
But
son's not gonna get a regular job, right? But like
yeah,
now she gets to see like, yo, like my son is able to do this like super fly things like left and right? Like he has a career. He didn't end up homeless, right? Like he's
yeah.
actually like thriving and doing the thing that he wants to do. And I think that is like, I think for everybody who's like considering walking down any road of like uncertainty, like that's what you really have to show, right? Because if you could become a doctor and then be unhappy and then have like that some not like resentment towards your parents, but like it's not the same as like, yo, I got my parents like allowed me to chase my dreams and then I was able to do with it and they were able to see that level of like pure happiness, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a crazy like, I'm actually so grateful for, like, everything. Like, I literally wake up every day. I know I feel like I'm about to say some mad zenned out nonsense, but, like, I literally wake up every day and I'm, like, so thankful. I'm like, "I can't believe I live in New York. I just make creative things and I do art for a living and I just make things with my friends all day. I get to just I basically, like, did nothing today, you know? Like, I didn't do nothing, but it's just I woke up and then I'm, like, working on creative scripts. Like, this is all I want. This is all I wanted my life to be, and that's what it is, and, like, it's just a cool feeling that I was able to choose that and it like all kind of worked out. And there's just still like mountains of things that I got left to do, but where I'm at right now, like I'm like this is crazy. Like when I was 18, this was the dream.
And now you're living it.
I'm living the dream, literally. So I'm like just thankful for that. You know, I'm thankful for the moment that I'm in. At the same time, I'm like, there's so much work to be done, and like I'm still working on a lot of things, but I'm just thankful for like this moment that I'm in for sure.
Yo, Dej, I'm excited. I'm excited to see. Like, as
Thank
like
you,
somebody who's just
man.
like the observer of all of this, right? I love seeing it. Like, I really want to see like seeing from like, yo, like your TikTok like a year ago when you moved in, right? And now seeing like, yo, where you're at inside like this media, right? Yo, another year here, like, dude, you're gonna be crushing it. Yo, appreciate you doing this, man.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, brother.
Appreciate you.